Hello, ladies. I'm honored that you have tuned in to Homemaking Radio, and I hope you get a few things done while you listen. Not everything will be according to your taste, but there are many other places you can go to hear what you'd like to hear. I've got my favorite things, and I never listen to myself because I'd probably delete them all if I heard myself talking. I'd see all the mistakes, and that would be the end of that. But since you are here, I'm terribly honored that you came, and this is so much more convenient than the way we used to have seminars for ladies in the church where you had to go somewhere, go to someone's place, or they had to come to yours or to the church. And this way you don't have to leave your family, leave your children, or leave your jobs at home. You can actually do some things while you listen, which you couldn't if you were attending something. On the other hand, the fellowship is very nice, and we are missing that. But today I hope to inspire you to be successful at home. And before you go to about your work, I want to share my teacup with you. I just love this teacup. We are covered in frost out here on the farm and at the manse. And so I am in the mood to look frosty and have frosty things, but this is a teacup that looks very much like something Laura Ashley might have had. I really wish that I had had the opportunity and the money to use a lot more Laura Ashley when she was alive and when she had her business and it was just booming, and the fabrics and all the accessories and homemaking items were, and the clothing was so attractive to me. However, now I am collecting some things. This is called, this is Gracie Teaware, and you can get it on the web. And it also, I bought this at Home Goods Before Captivity, and so I'm awfully glad I did. It's got that pale off-white background with, looks like a calico, little roses. I really like it. So now, I don't think I have anything to show you today. So I am going to do some talking and perhaps some reading to you. And I have 3 sections for those of you who are new here. Please go over to the link that I have provided and listen to this video there on my site, because I'm just making it for my posts, and it's just part of my posts, and there'll be other things on there, including photographs and lists and challenges. And so this is just to embellish my blog. So please go over there to listen. And if you will subscribe to my on email, or there's a place where you can subscribe to the posts, so that when the posts come up, there usually a video in there, so you don't really have to subscribe on YouTube if you don't want to. Now, as introduction, I want to talk to you about preparation before you get ready to go and get yourself ready for your homemaking. Now, this outfit here I probably wouldn't wear to do a lot of heavy, dirty jobs, but if I do wear it, I would have an apron over it, and the apron would cover the top part of it, and that way I could wear it more. And I'm digging a little further into my clothing and wearing things that I previously had saved for times when we would go somewhere else, and we're not going anywhere now, so home is where it's at, and I'm dressing up for the home. I don't think there's anything more important now than the home. Home has become everything, since many people are at home, and they are now furnishing their homes with things that matter and things that make it more convenient and more invigorating. And for example, I told you about how one thing that I had done had helped so much. In every room there's a tray with one of the automatic shut-off kettles, water kettles where you can boil water. And I've got cold drinks, I've got things that you can make, cups, and you can make hot drinks, you can make tea, coffee, chocolate, anything you want in every room. And that's because when I have a big crowd here, they don't all get bottlenecked off in the kitchen or further on down there. So there's one in the dining room, there's one in the living room, there's one even in the utility room when you're doing laundry. There's a convenient place there to get a cup of tea. and every bedroom has a place. But this was part of learning to live at home, because previously many people had awakened in the morning to rush off to go somewhere else for everything that was important. Well, now there's work at home, there's play at home, there's amusement at home, there's creativity at home, there's learning at home. So there's a center. The home is the center for everything. And so that is one reason why I say to get dressed before you get started in there. For those of you who are new, there are 3 parts to this, sometimes more. And the first part is your preparation. And the preparation includes bathing and smelling nice and brushing your teeth and having nice, a fresh look, getting your hair done, learn to do your hair yourself. That's something that a lot of people have learned to do. They'll find a video on how to take care of themselves so that we're not outsourcing everything else. And previous to captivity, we have gotten used to the world supporting our way of life, and there's a structure out there that supports us, and so we have outsourced so many things. We've outsourced knowledge, we've outsourced creativity, we've outsourced hairdressing, and there are ways to take care of yourself, look after yourself. And so I'm trying to show how you can do all that at home for those of you who are at home more now, and how you can thrive rather than just survive and learn more, become, I said before that we can come away on the other side of this better, stronger, healthier, thinner, maybe even younger, and more creative, and even maybe some people will be able to prosper throughout this. It would take quite a bit of ingenuity to do that. I'd like to know more about that. And people are now fixing up the inside of their houses, painting, finding ways to do things, finding ways to make it nice, because it is your life. And I think the home is going to be even more appreciated than ever before. And you won't find so many derogatory comments about homemakers and homeschoolers and people who have home businesses. And but I still think you have to get dressed up for it. Whatever you're doing at home today, I think it's very important to get dressed up for it, because that is a start. And this is one of the reasons why you should spend a certain amount of time in the bathroom. We're used to being rushed through everything because there might be someone waiting, but most homes today have more than one place where you can do your grooming. And so one of the reasons that we have had so little time is it's always getting ready to go do somewhere else, go do something somewhere else, somewhere more important. But now that we're home, you can spend a little more time in the bathroom on your appearance and get yourself, it also helps your mind to steady your mind and think, this is the beginning, this is the start of something good that's happening today at home. And so this is also appearance, and taking care of your appearance it might be the only time that you have to have some time to yourself. So that's why I think it's really important. And I know sometimes children are so funny. They will wait outside the bathroom door till their mother is out, and then they will be so happy because the door is open and there she is, but it's so important to have that time. And this is one reason why the character qualities of determination and self-control are so integral to success in the home, is because, and to any other part of life. And that's because when you're in captivity, or when you're at home, and most of us have been homemakers, most of us that tune in here have probably been homemakers most of their lives, and so to us, being in a special social and economic and political situation is not much different for us, because we are used to it. We are used to having a routine in the home. We are used to staying home. But for some people, that might not be so. And this is why the qualities of determination and self-control are so important, because even if you are in captivity, you're going to just automatically do the same things, do the things that it takes to be a human being. And you could be at home and apparently think that no one cares what you look like, so no one cares about your appearance, so why should you? But if you have this self-control and this character quality of wanting to be dignified, then that's going to happen no matter where you are, no matter what kind of situation you are in. And I've known people who have had to spend some time living in a tent down by a river, and the first thing they'll do is find some water and go somewhere, put a sheet on a tree and go inside and find a way to bathe and hang a mirror up and find a way to fix themselves up, and they're just out there, you know, in the nature. So why should it matter? Well, because it's integral to the human spirit and to self-dignity, and I believe that even the first man and woman on earth cared about their appearance, cared about what they wore, and cared about their grooming. And there is a lot of evidence that people in what we call the more primitive times were not so primitive, because as there have been archaeological digs, they have found combs and little pots of where creams were kept, and just perfumes, things like that. So they weren't so primitive as we think, and because it's just natural to want to care for yourself. And I think it's really important because it also gives a good example to the rest of your family. And if you have children and they're growing up, they know that that is part of what it's like to be grown up, is to take care of yourself. People who don't look after themselves are neglecting their grown-upness. So, and I think it's also important while I'm on the subject of appearance and preparation, because appearance and preparation to me are the same. They're the same. I know it's a lot of fun to walk into the kitchen in your bathrobe and get something to drink and just kind of sit around and look at the morning. And sometimes on winter mornings, we'll stand in front of the big picture window and watch the snow fall with a mug of something hot in our hands, or me with a cup of tea, and not get dressed for a moment, just taking in the beauty of the first light. But I think it's really important to have an appearance, to get dressed, because the rest of the day is so much more important. And you know, I have three things here that I like to discuss. One is your appearance or preparation, and the other is taking care of the home, and the other is taking care of people. And all three of these things for us at home have an emotional base. We find it hard, at least I do, to do all these things in a mechanical way. It has to have a reason. It has to have a feeling. It has to be heart in it. And so I think that's why they say the woman is the heart of the home, because while a housekeeper could come in and do all those things, they don't have an emotional attachment to it, and so the results will be slightly different. While it might look precisely correct, it also won't have the same kind of touch that a homemaker has, because we have an emotional approach to it. And so for your appearance, I can't just go in there and fix my hair and get dressed and have no feeling about it. Although I will notice that people who have gone to colleges and had to live in dorm rooms learn to transport their mind into only their studies, only the intellectual part of life, and so then they don't put any extra effort into their appearance. But at home, that is not necessary. And as I get further into my experience with homeschooling and how it changed my base beliefs and thinking, you'll understand why the appearance has to have some kind of emotion put into it. Because, you know, even a man, when he's combing his hair or he's shaving, he's thinking about how his family feels about his appearance. You know, he doesn't really want to appear to not care, or to for them to resist him in some way. So he wants to smell good, he wants to look good. And so your appearance has to have some kind of emotion in it, because you're thinking about your love for your family and for God when you do it, and it is a reflection of your Creator. Now let's go on to the home. It also, the housekeeping, the homemaking, the home decor, it also has an emotional base to it, doesn't it? And yes, you could mechanically just sweep everything, clean everything, and think that you had done your job, but you have to put some heart into it. And you're thinking about when you're making the beds and when you're folding those blankets, you're thinking about the care and concern that you have for others. And if there's no one at home right now, there will be someone there. Once they know you have an extra room, they will be eager to come when they're able to. So you want to keep up those skills. You want to keep up. If you've got rooms that have the beds have been made for a while and no one has been there for months, you might want to turn back the covers every now and then and air out the sheets and keep it fresh smelling. I know that after a winter with no one here, that even though the sheets on it are fresh and the bedding's all fresh, I always want to take them out to the line and let the sun bleach them and starch them and make them smell good, or just give them a good wash anyway, because it's just not good for stacks of blankets and sheets to sit there in the winter. And so you want to kind of check that out, make sure that that is fresh, and it also gives you good exercise and practice in homemaking to keep those things fresh. So, but the homemaking and the cleaning up and, you know, some of the things that we dread and we don't like to do, they do have an emotion to them, and that's probably why we dread them, because we're not in the mood. But if you have not got your sink, your kitchen cleaned up, it's particularly your sink, because that's where, you know, the bacteria forms, and get at least your sink and your bathroom and your kitchen and your bathroom and your laundry areas taken care of, fairly cleaned up, because that is where you need to have the most sanitary control. And so after you get yourself ready, then you get your house ready. And so start with the things that absolutely are calling at you to do. And it's probably the laundry, it's probably the kitchen and the bathroom. Those things have to be regularly checked. And if you could get everybody in the habit, and especially you, in the habit, as soon as you are finished in the bathroom, wipe the sink and shine the faucets and give the toilet a swish with a brush, no matter whether it needs it or not, and clean the floor. And that way you don't have a panic job when it really needs it, and or when, you know, you're expecting somebody. To just get in the habit of cleaning whatever room you're in. And I learned this from watching a woman that I liked a lot who lived in Canada, and she was from Scotland, and her mother had bred it into her to just clean as she went. I mean, her eyes were never still. She was always looking for opportunities to neaten something up. And when she left a room, you knew she had been there, not by the mess that she left, but by the special neatness and beauty that she left behind in those rooms. And so then I would like to suggest that in order to make homemaking and housekeeping more pleasant, you could increase your thankfulness. Now, I thought of that this morning while I was busy in the bathroom trying to get my unruly hair to settle down. I was thinking how grateful I was that the lights were working. And then I went into the laundry room briefly and checked out to see if I was ready to do a full load. And I was so grateful that the water was running in the washing machine and that the dryer worked, because if those things conk out, that just creates more trouble. Or if for some reason the electric's not working, this has probably happened to everyone. And I was so grateful for all the things that work. And when I went to bed last night, I had turned on that full load of the dishwasher, and I was listening to it hum along and just being so glad that was working. And so some of us are just living for today, hoping things will stay on and work. And increasing your gratefulness is so relieving, because it takes away the burdens of things. And so, excuse me about that phone. I didn't shut it off before I began, and I don't want to go get it. So don't think it's your phone. So So the way that I've got these crazy notes here, but I do want to read them to you. So I want to remind you of the challenge that I made at the beginning of this video to come out of the other end of this captivity. And listen to some of my previous videos where I went through the Bible and mentioned all the people in captivity and what their mission was and how they got smarter and more alert rather than sinking back into, it's really easy to let your mind check out and kind of wait things out, but I wouldn't do that at all. I would use the opportunity to develop yourself. I have been taking exercise courses and art courses, and there were others that I had wanted to take, but decided that it would be just as bad as going out to work because it would have taken up all my time, and I'm wanting to improve my house. And that's another goal I have, is to improve things at home, get back and dig a little deeper. And I mentioned that one of the reasons that I took some of the balancing exercises in the exercise course that I'm taking is because I get back in the laundry room and I need to, move some things around and get some things cleaned up. And it's a small space. The manse is fairly small, and I don't want to get back there, reach for something, and lose my balance. So I graduated from the stretch exercises to the balancing exercises, which are for beginners, which make me a little more confident in some of these little spaces that I get into. So the challenges, use this as a time to build your body, build your mind, become more alert, and learn something new, become healthier, happier, thinner, and think better and be more creative and develop better thinking habits. So I want to go on now to what homeschooling did for me. And one of the things that it did was teach me right away, almost from the very beginning, from some of the curriculum we got and some of the reading material on homeschooling that I got, taught me what a faith-based life was. Now, I've grown up in the Lord's church, and I've been married to a preacher for almost 50 years and done a lot of things with different churches around the world. And somehow, this was the first time I had ever heard of how every activity of your life at home is based on your faith, and how you can build your faith through what you do at home and through your learning at home. And it taught me that everything has a purpose, and the study materials were always used in light of God's real purpose. Everybody understood that you have a purpose, and it's to take care of something, to take care of someone, to build others up, to develop your talents, and to use them for God's glory. And the challenge, there was always a challenge to me that gives you hope that you can rise above ruin. Somebody comes and knocks your life over or thwarts your plans, teaches you how to rise above it. And it would use some of the stories that we read would use the Bible's examples of a spider in a web, and how the rain comes down and washes it all out, but he starts over again. And of course I grew up with that little song, and never really penetrated my brain that that was about life, and that you can rise above any kind of ruin that you encounter. So how to rebuild life, and it's constant from the time you're very young, how to rebuild life and do it the way Nehemiah did when he rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. And you might want to read that as one of the things that I assigned for my children was to read the book of Nehemiah and do a book review on it, and an analysis of it, and use it for steps to success. Figure out what the steps to success were, and what the enemy of success was, and the discouragement that came along, and how he dealt with discouragement and what he did with it. Because you can actually use discouragement as a stepping stone to success. I get awful discouraged in my house, especially after there have been a lot of people here, and the next day, of course, I've got to clean it up, and just redo everything and kind of recover. It's quite silent. That's the first thing you have to recover from is the silence, because there's been such a great amount of fellowship and then they're all of a sudden gone. And then the motivation is not there because you don't have the support of people around you. And so one of the challenges that I want to suggest is what we would do. See, right now, the internet is greatly supportive. It's a supportive place. You can go and find whatever you want to study. You can go find any activity, any ideas, and get lost on Pinterest. And try to stay away from that because that'd get me going. But so it's a wonderful outlet for communication and many other things and for self-development. But the challenge that I want to give myself and give you today is to see what you could do without the internet in case it's ever just pulled out from under us, in case this wonderful thing that God has given us is yanked away from us by those who don't believe in freedom. So here are some things you'll probably need to do. You'll need to have a printer maybe and print off a lot of things that you like, that you read often and that you think might be useful to you if you were without the internet, and memorize the exercises. Now that would be a hard one because I'm used to seeing a person lead the exercises, and it would be hard for me to memorize them without pictures and drawings. And so memorize them. Memorize a lot of, also make sure you get the addresses of a few people so that you can write to them, because if you write a newsletter and you only have 2 people, that's good because they can also network and get you more people for this newsletter. And you also might be earning some of your money, sort of your living through something like that, some little thing you make, or just the newsletter itself. And so right now, of course, we sort of outsource everything. Another thing that you can do is write stories. Now, I was talking to someone recently who was telling me that she was meeting more and more people who were writing stories for their own children, and they were just doing it on a piece of paper, and folding it, making their own pages. But you can actually go to a printer and get them printed off and make it look like a book. They were writing stories for their own children because some of the ones that they were buying just weren't adequate, or they didn't like the art, and they wanted something that would motivate their children or build them up or inspire them. And one lady was telling me that she came for tea the other day, and she said that her husband was telling the grandchildren a story, and they were really enjoying this story, and he knew it very well because his father had told him that story, and then he had told these stories to his children, and now he's telling them to his grandchildren. And we were discussing it, just how blessed everyone is that there are so many people now telling stories to their children and making them up, or telling their own stories of experiences they've had. And yesterday, someone came to see us, and they got after we'd had quite a nice conversation. They got up to leave. The husband stood at the door, and he said, "I just have to tell you something." And his wife was saying, no, get in the car, I don't want him, because she knew what he was going to tell, and they were kidding each other about it. And his wife had just by the door, just as you leave the door, she had a copy of the 10 Commandments on a little glass mirror, or some picture that had a glass front on it. And the 10 Commandments were there. And he said his father had been visiting them, and it's time for him to go, and so he opened the door and just kind of hit that, I guess he got his coat on or something, but he kind of hit that picture and broke it, and it all fell down, and of course his wife was pretty upset about it, and his father said, well, he said, I guess I've broken the 10 Commandments. So he, is going to write the story down and have it as one of the things that, in a lesson in irony or humor for his children. But it's very important that you write down something. You might not think you can tell a story, but you can write down something that happened, and you can write down something that's true, that's interesting to you. And so those of you who have bought my book, Just Breathing the Air, that's not about homemaking. That was about my childhood growing up in Alaska. And all I did was I took the photographs that we had, and I looked at them, and I thought in my mind of the behind story of the photograph. Okay, where did this take place? What was I thinking at the time? What do I think while looking at it, and what can I tell about this photograph? And I just write little paragraphs throughout the book that went with the photograph. Oh, you can do that. Or you can just, you're home alone, and as we're working and we're sweeping and washing dishes, we're left alone with our thoughts, and some memories are coming back, so you can write them down, and they'd be great stories. One of the things I like to do is if I have a memory, I'll call one of my children or grandchildren and say, I just remembered something and I wanted to tell you, just in case I never get it written down. And that's just a point of contact with them too. So there's a challenge to you to do what you can without the internet. So you're going to have to memorize your exercises, and you're going to have to learn to create, and you'll have to get addresses so that you can write letters or write a newsletter. And don't outsource everything you do. Try to figure out how you could get along without it and still have your communication and your outlet for creativity. And so I want to go on to some things that you might like to know here. And I will read you a little bit of poetry, and then I've got several more subjects here that I want to talk to you about. So I hope you're not sitting here watching me, because there's plenty to do in your house and you can get going at it. So I'm still reading the collected verse of Edgar A. Guest, and this is only part of his amazing amount of poetry. And he wrote for a newspaper in America after I believe it was the Second World War, and he was British, and he came here to live, and he had to collect human interest stories and poetry for this column in the newspaper, and eventually he just wrote his own, and he was just excellent. So this one's called A Prayer. Now, many of the things that he wrote here are directed to men and young men. But I think that they're very valuable to the homemaker, because we've got to have that kind of determination and stalwartness, and to stand for what is right, because we are guarding and guiding the home, and we're protecting it from false philosophies, and also from people that things and people and ideas that should never invade the home, that cause strife. A lot of women today are under tremendous stress, even in their homes, because of false notions and the things that are talked about. And so I'm always encouraging everyone to leave the mainstream media alone, because they never give you any hope, and it's always upsetting. And when they figure you have gotten used to something, they will invent something worse that's more of a calamity. And I have found out over the years that a lot of the things that media has done, even back in the 1800s, they sometimes staged things in order to sell newspapers. So I'm always a little suspicious of some of the stories they tell. So I would like to read this. It's called A Prayer by Edgar A. Guest. God grant me kindly thought and patience through the day, and in the things I've wrought let no man living say that hate's grim mark has stained what little joy I've gained. God give me my nature sweet, teach me to bear a blow, disaster and defeat, and no resentment show. If failure must be mine, sustain this soul of mine. God grant me strength to face undaunted day or night, to stoop to no disgrace, to win my little fight. Let me be, when it is o'er, as manly as before. Now, I know this is written to men, but it has the same character qualities as we women want to have stability. That's what these poems do, is they give you stability. So The next one is called The Pathway of the Living by Edgar A. Guest. The pathway of the living is our ever-present care. Let us do our best to smooth it and to make it bright and fair. Let us travel it with kindness. Let's be careful as we tread, and give unto the living what we'd offer to the dead. The pathway of the living we can beautify and grace. We can line it deep with roses and make earth a happier place. But we've done all mortals can do when our prayers are softly said for the souls of those that traveled o'er the pathway of the dead. The pathway of the living all our strength and courage needs. There we ought to sprinkle favors, there we ought to sow our deeds. There our smiles should be the brightest, there our kindest words be said, for the angels have the keeping of the pathway of the dead. You know, that what the purpose of that is to say we ought to, I heard Mr. S say at a funeral one time that people would rather have, it's better to give your mother or your wife a rose every day than to wait until she's dead and put a bouquet of roses on her casket. And he was just trying to show in this poem and in what Mr. S had said that those who are alive deserve our best care and our best honor. And I think that it's really important to teach your children to honor their mother, because that's going to be your future support group, is your children. So teach them to honor their mother and to speak things which build her up and which edify her. Because even though we're going to build up our children and edify them when they're younger, we hope that one day they will do the best, do it for us too, because we still have a future and a hope, and we still have goals and ambitions and things that we would like to do. And so it's really important to get them behind you, just like you were behind them. And so now I want to read another poem called If This Were All. If this were all of life we know, if this brief space of breath were all there is to human toil, if death were really death, and never should the soul arise a finer world to see, how foolish would our struggles seem, how grim the earth would be. If living were the whole of life, and in the end of 70 years, how pitiful its joys would seem, how idle all its tears. There'd be no faith to keep us true, no hope to keep us strong, and only fools would cherish dreams, no smile would last for long. How purposeless the strife would be if there was nothing more, if there were not a plan to serve, and ends to struggle for, no reason for a mortal's birth except to have him die. How silly all the goals would seem for which men bravely try. There must be something after death, behind the toil of man. There must exist a God divine who's working out a plan, and this brief journey that we know as life must really be the gateway to a finer world someday that we will see. These are the things that songs are made of. Now I'm going to read The Gift of Life, and I may have read this to you before. Not much from this great world I ask beyond the strength to do my task, and I've read this, I have read this before. It is enough that I may be on hand to see a blossoming tree and hear a songbird now and then, singing his hymns of joy to men. Books on a shelf, a ruddy fire, a restful nook where'er I retire, laughter of children at their play, outside a little garden gay, where all the blazing summer through comes into bloom, some splendor new. I do not ask that life shall be forever care and sorrow free, nor that some distant morning I shall not awake to grieve and sigh. I ask but faith to stand before whate'er the future has in store. Let me be one whose courage springs from all the countless little things of joy and beauty which abound wherever man may look around. Let me exult in peace or strife that I have had the gift of life. That's one of the reasons why I tell you to get dressed in the morning before you start your work at home, because life is such a wonderful gift, and each day, this day is more important because we don't know we're going to have tomorrow. And it is the only tool we have. It is the only thing we have right now. So use it and don't wait for something better to happen. And that's the whole purpose in getting ready and getting dressed and taking care of your appearance, is there isn't going to be a better day. And I've often said when I show you the teacup I'm using my best because the queen is not coming. And so you may not have a better day. So you need to treat this day as though it were a celebration, that this is wonderful. This is one of the beauties that I learned from homeschooling, was that every day was the day that the Lord had made, and it was a blessing. It was a gift. So let us dress for it. And one of the beauties of homeschooling is that the children had time. They had time to get enough sleep and then get up and go leisurely into the bathroom and get themselves ready. And the boys always came out, with the button-down shirt tucked in and a belt and their hair combed, and happy they were to be themselves and to be happy to come to the table and be happy to be alive. And so I want to talk a little bit about graciousness now. It's hard to be gracious sometimes when you get around people that are always bragging. And I remember my mother-in-law, she was not a grandmother till she was in her, I believe, late 60s, because she didn't marry till she was 38. And so she was not a grandmother till much later. And she said she endured years and years of people at church showing her their grandchildren's picture or bragging about their grandchildren. She said she just got so tired of it. But she learned a type of graciousness in that whenever they would show a picture, or they would show off their grandchild, bring their grandchild to church, or brag about some accomplishment of the grandchild, she just learned to say, "I'm so happy for you. That is so nice. You've got a very nice grandchild." That's graciousness. When it's very hard, sometimes to compliment people who are busy complimenting themselves, but that's graciousness. So I think we all can benefit from that. It just makes you a giving person. You just let go and a compliment, and if possible, compliment every parent that has a faithful child and is doing a good job on their child. And even if they're not quite up to your standards, encourage them. And that's graciousness. And for example, a woman who was unable to have children said that she always encouraged other people to have children if they could, and prayed for them and was gracious to their children. And so that she wouldn't fall into this resentment of, getting tired of people having great success in her life when she wasn't, is to praise their success. That is true graciousness, isn't it? And so, but I think it also comes with the years and with age. It's awfully harder. It's a little bit harder, I think. I felt it harder when I was younger than I do now. So there are different kinds of graciousness. You can be gracious in your living. And to me, gracious means something that's smooth and not edgy, or, gracious living is comfort and beauty, and also graciousness in conversation, and then you cover it all in prayer. And so, and graciousness also in your appearance. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, I've always loved textiles, that. I love to sew, and I like fabric, and so today I have this book called Victoria at Home in white, and I have read out of it to you before, but and it has pictures of decor and things done in white. And I was reading it today and discovered that she had a page on cotton. And cotton is such an interesting fabric, but it soaks up the water. And several places in the world where countries have decided to grow cotton, they'll find that their rivers have a lower level of water, or that they've drained a swamp because they've grown cotton. And so it does very well in places that have a lot of water. But I would like to read this to you because it has a saying in it that you may have heard. Now, If you grew up in the olden days like I did, you may have heard this. I don't know if the current generation has heard this, but there may have been poems and songs with this phrase in it. The French have a saying that someone is raised in cotton, meaning that he or she is wonderfully spoiled. So yes, I have heard that phrase. Have you heard that, raised in cotton? Would be lovely to revive some of these things. I don't know if very many people have seen a cotton field anymore, but the Roman poet Lucretius compared the fiber of cotton to white clouds. Cotton was cultivated in India before 2000 BC. In the 8th century AD, the Moorish conquerors of Spain brought with them cloth woven from cotton grown in Persia, India, and China. It was the Crusades, however, that made Europeans cotton conscious. After the last crusade, which ended in 1291, merchants established headquarters in Venice, where they continued to deal with Saracen traders for cotton goods. By the end of the 16th century, cotton linen weaves were being produced in French cities such as Lyons and Rouen. A stronger all-cotton fabric called cretonne was developed in the French village of Creton at about the same time. The opening of sea trade with the East in the 17th century made cotton available to rich and poor alike. Among other treasures crammed in the holds of the returning ships of the Dutch, English, and French East India companies were printed and painted cottons from India. These inexpensive cottons, later called chintz, quickly became a craze. Now remember, chintz was polished, and I think it was, and Laura actually had some chintz or polished cotton dresses. These inexpensive cottons, later called chintz, quickly became a craze, and the threat that they posed to the powerful English weavers caused the government to prohibit their importation. This only stimulated imitation, and English textile printers soon were making a chintz of their own that was better match for English taste. Cotton's final ascent to popularity came after the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney in 1793. Traveling through America, the French writer and politician, I don't know if I can pronounce that, Chateaubriand, thought that cotton plants he saw in the fields resembled white roses. The quality of cotton, like that of linen, derives from a combination of the length of the fibers. Those of Egyptian cotton, which is considered the best, are about 17 inches long, the fineness of the yarn, and the number of threads per square millimeter. Because they are usually lightweight, cottons are trimmed with only a hint of lace, a bit of cutwork or openwork such as eyelet or flounces to underscore their airiness. One of the sheerest cottons is muslin. I have spoken to you of muslin many times. I love it. All my curtains are made of muslin. My tablecloths are made of muslin. I love it, and I like to dye it different colors, use it for clothing. And a muslin blouse that I make will last me 10 years. A great favorite of the ladies of the Napoleonic era in the 18th, got some pictures here to go, 18th century. Today, two of the sheerest types are voile, a muslin with a plain open weave, and organdy, a transparent muslin that takes on a permanent crispness when it is bleached. And they show, tablecloth made out of that. I thought you would be interested in that. And so today, ladies, I want to just discuss a couple of more things with you before you go. And I will leave some links for you today for chair exercises, and also for those of you that are still interested in politics but don't want to get it from the disturbing viewpoint of the main media news. I'll leave you a couple of links that will bring you some information that won't disturb you too much. So one of the problems that's going on today is what we're fighting is communism, and communism will it'll be under different names like socialism or globalism, but what they do that why Christians are so fiercely opposed to it is, and homemakers should be too, is because they put you in a position where you have to violate your conscience and violate God's laws and your own convictions. you can no longer, once they get a hold of your life and start running every little area of it, you can no longer be a giving, loving person and a generous person and show hospitality to others, because they'll scrunch down on every part of your life and forbid it. And they'll forbid the free movement of people. You cannot help, you won't be able to help your family, you won't be able to um, be there for them, because they will get you not talking to each other. And so communism is very, very dangerous to the Christian life, and I don't believe that that Christians should just stand back and be passive about it. Communism also causes false ideas to enter into the home and can cause a lot of strife in your home. And especially if you're homeschooling, you need to be um, cautious of outside influences that are false philosophies that might be brought into your home through media, through reading, through people, or even when you go out, you can pick it up sometimes, these attitudes. And you know, the Bible, you remember that verse uh, in the Psalm, uh, your word is a light unto my path. And he talks about it being a light unto your feet. Well, apparently Roman soldiers at night used to have a light that was on their sandals or their shoes or boots, and they could walk and see, you know, walk among the rocks and the craggy places, and they have a little light there. And how the Bible will use things like light and path and feet and walk and stand and sit, um, which are physical things that we can identify with, that have to do with our bodies, and how they can, the Bible uses figures of speech, and how it turns it into the spiritual part of your life. In other words, a light, we all know what a light is, but it talks about the light to the mind and to the soul. And that's why in captivity especially, you have an opportunity to develop your soul and develop your spiritual life by reading the Bible and learning what true spiritual light is. And then a path. You know, we know what a path is, don't we? I have a little path that goes from the manse to the meeting house, and I travel that quite often. And we know what a path is, but what about a path in life? What about direction in life, and developing character, and how that's going to take you on a path of being around good things and prevent you and protect you from bad things, having good character. And there is a scripture, I believe, in Proverbs that a man who is upright and has good character will be in the presence of wise people. And then also uses the word feet, and sitting and standing and walking. We know what it means to sit and stand and walk. You know, Psalms 1, blessed is a man that sitteth not in the seat of the scornful. You can read that psalm and see all the references to the body, sitting, standing, walking, and yet it wants to show you by using it as a figure of speech as to what sitting in the seat of the scornful means. There's no literal seat there of scorn, but it just means when you sit with someone, you're giving ear to their opinions. You know, you're giving ear to them, and you're going along with it. So spiritually, it's not good to be around scorn, a lot of scorn. And I have talked to you about a couple of philosophies that you need to look up and see. I'm homeschooling you now, kids. I'm elderly now, and now I can speak my mind. So there are 3 words I'd like you to look up, and one is cynic. And cynic was a person, you can look up the history of this, but I'll just give you a brief overview of it. I'm not reading it from anything, so I'll just have to kind of remember. He was a man that lived before Christ, and he just went against all sound judgment, and anything that had any kind of construction to it, he would just deconstruct it, like wearing clothes backwards, or eating at all times without any kind of kind of reason, or formality, or he would not bathe. And so we kind of have this sort of cynic. A cynic, we use his name as a description for a philosophy of everything. People being cynical. Cynical just means you're cynical means that you mock and scorn anything that has any construction, is beautiful, is lovely, it has any kind of cultural meaning, any family traditions. You just scorn them as cynic. It's the same as scornful, because cynic made this scornful way of life popular. And so then we have the nihilist, and that I believe is spelled N-I-H-L-I-S-T. I am not quite sure. It could be N-H-I. So I'd like you to look that up. So look up cynic, look up nihilist. And one of the purposes of homeschooling is you don't just spoon feed everybody. You can tell your children generally like what I'm telling you, what it means, but you want them to go further and inspire their curiosity so they can look it up if it's done in the right manner. In other words, to avoid these things. Don't say look them up and learn to admire them and be like them. You want them to look these things up and learn why they don't go with the Christian life. So a nihilist was somebody that just thought life was absolutely useless, just down on everything. And so I wonder if cynic or nihilist were getting ideas from each other. A nihilist. Now, I see the word annihilate in there. So I just wonder if that's where we got that word annihilate. When you annihilate something, you just wipe it out. It's no good. And then there was the Gnostic, and that's spelled G-N-O-S-T-I-C. So I would like you to look that up and see what you can find out about that. The reason I'm telling you this is as a homemaker, you're to guard and guide the home. That's what the Bible teaches. And these things, although they're ancient, come in different ways back into your home, and they can pollute your children's minds, your husband's mind, and your mind. A lot of times the husband hasn't got time to deal with a lot of learning because he's busy, he's off doing his, earning a living, and he's busy with his work, and he doesn't actually have time to get into this. But when you've studied the nihilist, the Gnostic, and the cynic, you can start to recognize, even when you're listening to mainstream media news, you can start to see it. You see the philosophy there. So Gnostic, apparently, generally, you can look at more detail about this. They're mentioned in the Bible. The Gnostics were people who believed that only the soul could be pure, not the body. In other words, you could do whatever you wanted with your body. You could cut yourself. You could become a glutton. You could be very sinful. You could smoke. You could drink. Whatever you wanted, because the body could not sin, only the soul. And so they just thought that they didn't just quite understand that, the idea of glorifying God in your body and living a pure life. And so you want to look up these three people: the cynic, the nihilist, the Gnostic. And the Gnostic is G-N-O-S. So I could probably write that down for you on the post, and you could look at that. So let me just look at my notes here. And so the communist and the state and the globalists, they exist to break down the family, because the family and the church are the things that are slowing them down. That's the only thing that is in their way, is the Bible, the Word of God, and in America, our Constitution. They have always wanted to get rid of that. See, our life is based on the Bible, but our Constitution is also based on the Bible. And so because we love law so much, the law of the Lord in the Bible and the law of the land in our Constitution, they couldn't get us to hate that. So what they have to do, what they feel they have to do, is change the meaning of words. So then they can pollute the Bible and the Constitution. Just change it a little bit, or change the actual documents, change the Bible, print a new Bible with different meanings and words in it, and eventually get rid of the Constitution, because that's the only thing holding them back from total control of your life. And the Constitution is also based on the Bible. And so in order to get you to hate it, they have to distract you from the law. That's the only thing that's really bothering these people, is that the character that we're getting from the Bible and from the Constitution of the United States makes us independent, and we don't want to be subject to people who will take away our religious freedom and who will take away our children. And they do. They have taken away our children in many ways, even before this current political crisis, because if your children went out to work, or even if you were out with your children and you listened to something coming out of the overhead of a store, and is a song that had some words in it that were rather rebellious, these are very subversive to the family. And so yes, they can take your family away from you. The idea, of course, is to destroy the family and to cause trouble in the home. And so ladies, I hope that this has been a little bit more cheerful. I realize maybe not so much in some of the poetry, but I hope that it leaves you on a better note, and that you got a few things done while you listen. And I do so appreciate your comments. So if you have any observations to make, you can leave a comment over there where I have posted this, and I left the link here, so you can go over there and read what else I have to write on the post and leave me a comment. If you don't want to leave a comment on the blogger section, you may email me, which is on the left over there. And so I hope you got a lot done today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.